Khandanam Bhagavan
Jagi
Sharam Nara Vara Deha Pade Anurag Nirbhaya Gato गुरु महाराज जी की जय। ॐ ह्रीं ऋतं त्वमचलो गुणजित् गुणेभ्यः नातं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्तलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्त्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदये न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसा त्वयि तृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मर्त्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्मि नाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृतं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारिं शान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्यं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ सर्वमङ्गल Mangale Shive Sarvartha Shadhike Sharane Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Srishti Sthite Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Guna Saye Guna Maye Narayani Namostute Sharana Gata Dinartha Paritrana Parayane Sarvas Sharati Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Jayana Narayani Namostute Jayana Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jaya Narayani Namostute Jai Mahamai ki Jai Jai Bhagawan Sri Ramakrishna Dev ki Jai Jai Swami Ji Maharaj Ji ki Jai
Hello, check. Hello. Hello, check. Namah Shri Atirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchet Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Hello? Yeah. Bass thoda cut kar. हाँ जी? अभी? ठीक है? Oh, okay. All right. So, at the end of last time, we had discussed, or we had just mentioned this passage from the Chandogya. He that is the essence of your soul, he is the truth, tat satyam. He is the self, thou art that, O Shvetaketu. Tattvam asi Shvetaketu. This expression, Tattvam asi, has been repeated a number of times in the Chandogya. This is father of Shvetaketu instructing him in this knowledge of the self. And then Vivekananda adds, this is what is meant by thou art God. You cannot describe him by any other language. All attempts of language, calling him father or brother or our dearest friend, are attempts to objectify God, which cannot be done. He is the eternal subject, capital S, of everything. I am the subject of this chair. So in particular, this table, this room, etc., these appear in my consciousness. It is in that sense that the observer, that the knower, is the subject and everything else is an object of knowledge. I see the chair. So God is the eternal subject of my soul. It is the principle of consciousness with respect to which everything, this world around us, is an object of knowledge, an object of awareness, an object of consciousness. Let's go a little bit into this, because this is something that we need to understand. And understand why the Upanishads, why these traditions came into being. Essentially, human beings wonder, see, once the basic needs, basic creature comforts are taken care of, the inquiry arises, what does all of this mean? This quest for meaningfulness is the same as the quest for consciousness, the quest for existence, the quest for bliss or joy. See, just now you heard this Sarva Mangala Mangalya. This is some stotra, sung in the form of a song. This word Mangala, which also means, when we use the word Shiva, usually we refer to a deity, but it really means Mangala. Goodness. These fundamental values that human beings seek in life are things that are typically not objectifiable because they are essentially one with our basic existence, our basic quests. So where do we find goodness? Where do we find existence unthwarted, unqualified? Where do we find this principle of knowledge? And that leads us to inquire really into the core of our own being, asking ourselves, what is it in me that makes me seek goodness, that makes me seek joy, that makes me seek knowledge, existence, etc. So, but our minds are structured such that everything becomes an object of our minds, an object of our knowledge, an object of our consciousness. Hence, in order to get the mind focused on this subjective phenomenon of joy, bliss, goodness, existence, etc., that idea, that core idea which defines us, projected out, becomes objectified in the form with a name of a personal God. But it is in and through our consciousness that that is perceived. So the understanding needs to come through this subjective awareness, not in something objective. A particular form which might evoke great joy, great exaltation in some group of individuals, in some culture, might be horrible, terrifying from the point of view of another culture. These are associations that human beings make, and that's objectified, and it grows up as a kind of a culture over time. Where do these paths agree then? Where does the unification lie? Certainly not in the objective concepts, certainly not in the objective images, certainly not in the objective ritualistic traditions. But that unification comes through, in and through the analysis of the subject, till all these differences dwindle and fade. This subjective analysis is carried on in these traditions of Jnana Yoga, where the principal focus is on analysis. The analytical will of the philosopher, as Vivekananda has called it in another place. The analytical will really means a capacity to separate out from within oneself things that one tends to objectify from the subject itself. This analysis, coupled with a strong will to get beyond these appearances, is exactly what he refers to as the analytical will of the philosopher. It's the faculty which leads us in deeper and deeper to get more comprehensive, better answers to these questions. What is it in me that seeks joy? What is it in me that seeks knowledge, etc.? This process is driven by a particular strong desire, the desire for truth itself. See, for instance, this question, what exactly is truth? I think we've mentioned this before. It's something that has occupied the minds and brains of philosophers for years, for eons. But has a comprehensive resolution been made? No. There are schools of thought, epistemological thought, where one says what knowledge is, what comprises truth, etc. And one goes and progresses towards it. But it is something in our constitution that affirms that this is true. And what is the characteristic of that? It is something that cannot be contradicted, cannot be sublated by other evidence, by other pieces of knowledge. So it is this desire for truth above everything else that fuels this enquiry. It is not some armchair intellectual cogitation, but an intense mental process that seeks truth above everything else, compares some particular fact that has been presented to our consciousness, some particular circumstance that has been presented to our consciousness, with other pieces of knowledge that one has. And if there is a contradiction between the two, then one has to take a call on what really one should go by, what really one should guide one's life by. This ongoing process is a process of truth, a process of enquiry into truth, enquiry into meaning, and where it culminates is where the instrument of enquiry itself, the mind, starts losing its characteristics as something that distinguishes itself from this object and subject. In Vedanta, that's called Triputi. It's not a very profound, it's at a certain level, it's a generalization which is quite common sense. Everything that we gain a knowledge of in the usual sense consists of a subject, a knower, an object or known, and the mediation, the process that connects the two, which is knowing or knowledge. It's when this enquiry proceeds vigorously and deeply to an extent such that basically we are guided by the idea that there is some truth underlying all this that we see and know. Simultaneously, there is this awareness that there is something true in my own existence. When this dichotomy between the truth behind my existence and the truth behind the world around me, that dichotomy ceases. That is the process and its culmination that these words, thou art that, points a finger to. Thus, those who want to seek a truth conditioned by this entire world are seeking a personal God for which this entire universe that we see around us and objectify, that is a symbol. Then there is the subjective process of enquiry, which asks for what is this that is conscious in me, an inquiry into consciousness itself. And this formula, thou art that, thou meaning Shvetaketu or the individual locus of consciousness, the consciousness behind the individual, and that is the consciousness behind this universe. And what is the connection between them? Art. It is the same. There is no difference. At a certain level, it is quite tautological, because in and through this process of enquiry, these differences are erased. The same principle is found behind the objective universe and behind one's own self. Not as a purely intellectual construct, but as something that is a conviction that guides our day-to-day lives. This is the culmination towards which these words, Tattvam Asi, points a finger to. How can you objectify him, the essence of your souls, the reality of everything? Thus, I would repeat to you once more, God is neither knowable nor unknowable, but something infinitely higher than either. He is one with us and that which is one with us is neither knowable nor unknowable as our own self. You cannot know your own self. You cannot move it out and make it an object to look at, because you are that and cannot separate yourself from it. Neither is it unknowable, for what is better known than yourself? It is really the center of our knowledge. In exactly the same sense, God is neither unknowable nor known, but infinitely higher than both, for He is our real self. Essentially, what he is really doing here is he is excavating this basic instinct that human beings developed since the dawn of civilization, when the creature comforts, basic amenities were taken care of, and they looked around, they had the time and leisure and mental space to look around and ask themselves, what does this world mean? What does my existence mean? And that becomes a fairly tangible question when one asks, what is it that dies when I claim I die? And some answers are given, words are spelt out, but any number of words, any intellectual framework is almost tautologically, by definition, something like a framework that is objectified. It is something that can be shared between one individual and another. What is important is the flash of knowledge that accompanies that sharing of words, that sharing of speech. And what it indicates, what it points a finger to, is this process. It could be devotional when one looks around at the universe in awe. And that feeling is that feeling of wonderment, that feeling of awe, is what fuels inquiry. What is this? What is this? That's what the person inquiring says. What is this wonder which we call the world around me? It's as if something hidden and half asleep has suddenly awoken within us and looks around and asks, what is this wonder around me? Why am I looking at all this, and why does it all make some sense to me? That making some sense to me is meaningfulness. This world appears meaningful provided only one has inquired into the deeper recesses of one's heart and excavated that sense of wonderment. No less a scientist than Einstein at some stage says that this sense of wonderment is the greatest treasure, the greatest feeling that a human being can have. A person inquiring into truth, whatever be the particular subject that person is, occasionally, very occasionally, comes across this momentary sense of wonderment, where the individuality is lost and the subject is lost in wonderment in this magnitude and enormity that this universe represents. At these moments, the principle of individuation that separates me from the world this principle has vanished for a moment. And when one comes back to one's normal way of thinking, that memory still persists and is expressed as, what is this? What is this? In the Kathamrita, Sri Ramakrishna says, Eki, Eki. An expression, it literally translates to, what is this? What is this? It's this expression of wonderment. And then people try to rub this feeling of wonderment by trying to put it into some box, closet it, and try to put some mystical framework, and the wonderment is gone. Just some words which really devalue the subjective experience itself. What should it lead us to? And that is a process of experimentation, a process of inquiry, which leads us deeper till this wonderment, till the essence of this feeling of wonderment, which fuels our inquiry, becomes one with our being. In other words, what started with this feeling of what is this, this wonderment, the inquiry leads us to the deeper recesses of our own being, the core of our psyche, from where springs this feeling. And this feeling is true. True in the sense that it guides this quest for truth. It is what makes us have the energy and the drive to ask, what is true in this world? What is true in this experience that I am having of the world? The sun rises, the moon rises, the wind blows. Every moment of our existence, there is this thing that we are getting for free. The oxygen we consume, the clothes we wear, the food we eat. That itself is something that is a wonderment. We are not entitled to this oxygen, and we somehow or the other feel that we are entitled to it. We feel that we are entitled to life. As soon as that sense dwindles a little bit, then the very fact that one is alive at this moment and this oxygen is feeding us, nourishing us, the food that we consume is something that we get for free and nourishes us. The clothes we wear, every little bit that we get from this world becomes part and parcel of something that comes uncaused, unasked for. Not something that we have earned, not something that is a product of something we have done. What have we done to deserve the oxygen that we consume? The farmer tills the soil, grows the fruit, and then through some exchange of some currency, we get it on our table and we eat. Similarly for clothes. Somebody grows cotton or some fabric, some weaver weaves it into cloth, and then again by some exchange of currency we get it and we clothe it. We clothe ourselves. Every moment of our lives, we are getting these things at a certain level for free without earning them. If you think that, all right, let's try to unwind that a little more, well, there is this division of labor amongst human beings and we do certain things. I don't think any of us sitting here or hearing this actually grows and tills the soil. Well, then we do something and somehow that earns us some money, for instance, which means that there is some something that society gives us in exchange for something we do. And then that takes the form of food, clothing, etc. So let us leave out oxygen, which somehow or the other has come for free. But if you think about it, how has this happened? It's basically because society has built up on the principle of a division of labor. Some person does something, growing food. Another person does something, going and exchanging currency in a bank. Another person does a third thing, conveys knowledge in the form of teaching, etc. So this society has divided labor between different groups of people. How did that all happen? It's not that somebody sitting outside decided to assign duties to various people, but it is this collective human consciousness that decided for itself that if we divide labor amongst ourselves in this such and such way, then it becomes good for everybody. Again, the principle of goodness playing. This penetration beyond surface realities allows us to see this goodness in and through our little daily dealings. Now let's come to this oxygen. What happened? At a certain point of time, most of the living creatures on this planet happen to be plants of a certain elementary nature. It is they who generated a surfeit of oxygen on the surface of the planet, and then oxygen-based life emerged. And that oxygen-based life means life that consumes oxygen and turns out output in the form of energy. That creature again after that decomposes and it goes back to the soil and nourishes the plants. This equilibrium has taken millions and millions of years to come into existence. And we, today, are the end products of that process. And at each time, each moment, there were zillions of directions in which things could have moved, and somehow it has come in one particular direction. And then we are looking at that route from our vantage point and wondering, how did all these accidents happen? And finally, this accident which we call me. And there's this earth which is giving us all these things for free, and this existence of human beings and other animals and plants, and this equilibrium with which we are one. This is a partial answer, but it does not decrease that wonderment. And again, that wonderment fuels inquiry. I mean, all these things that we've talked about, society is forming out of some rationale. Evolution happening, oxygen dominating the world. Again, we offer these as reasons. But at the end, why did it all happen is something we just cannot fathom. And that inability to fathom expresses itself as this wonderment, one of the noblest sentiments that human beings have. And so it can be the starting point of any inquiry. An inquiry, the various scientific disciplines are fueled by this wonderment. The mystics' inquiry into God is fueled by the same wonderment. And so on. The self-inquiry is fueled by this wonderment about how is it that I exist. Essentially, it does not take for granted one's own existence. Why should I exist? This is the question that really, if it becomes a dominant theme, then that dominance of our minds by this question is a product of this sense of wonderment. Why does this world around me exist? And why does it make sense to me? Do we even have the words really to encapsulate this feeling? Perhaps not. But it does not detract from this sense of wonderment that we have. And so, it is in this sense of wonderment. What is this? What is this? That we seek an answer. As it is said, and then the culmination of that really becomes what the theists call God, what the Buddhists call Shunya, what the scientists call consciousness, and what the Advaitin or Vedantin calls the Atman. Yeah? It is really the center of our knowledge. In exactly the same sense, God is neither unknown, neither unknowable nor known, but infinitely higher than both. For He is our real self. These dichotomies, these logical antipodes, something is not, something is knowable, something is not knowable, etc. These dichotomies that we grasp the world in terms of, this is such and such, this is not such and such. These antipodes condition our minds. And we grasp reality in and through these. But where do these polarities arise? Do they exist outside ourselves? No. It is our method, our largest, our most general method of grasping reality. And that is these polarities are things in terms of which we make sense of the world. What one is asking here is really the foundations of one's own psyche, one's own consciousness, from which these polarities arise, from which yes and no arise. Yes and no are aspects, modes of our consciousness. In the Kathamrita, Sri Ramakrishna says, Osti nasti prakritir khala. This yes and no are a play of nature. These appear in our consciousness. But that which we are is obviously something which expresses itself in terms of this yes and no. So when this sense of wonderment arises, what is this? What is this? Eki, eki. What one culminates, where that inquiry leads us is to what is it in us that gives rise to these notions that such and such exists, such and such does not exist. Which is why there are these completely opposite words which point a finger to that reality. The Buddhists call it Shunya, the Vedantin calls it Purna. In common parlance, those would be opposite to each other. One is emptiness, literally translated as emptiness. The other translated as everythingness. What it really means is that which one is seeking is not caught within these polarities of is and is not caught within these polarities of yes and no, but rather the foundations from which these spring. And these foundations that towards which we are going, not caught, not catchable, not something that can be encapsulated, within this framework, not something that can be objectified, however subtly. This is why the inquiry is really into the subject in and through which we know, not an object of knowledge, nor indeed is it unknown. As I've mentioned before, even there's this book which is recent, this author called Scott Armstrong, called From Democritus. It's supposed to be a book on quantum computation, something which is a very current field of inquiry. There he makes the statement, this consciousness has this dual property. First, it is not something that we grasp, not something we can grasp in terms of what? In terms of our usual objective way of thinking, in terms of any scientific paradigm, in terms of any theistic, dualistic, religious tradition even. But on the other hand, there is this other aspect, that it is in and through consciousness that we know everything. It's the only thing that is immediate to us. Immediate literally, not mediated by anything. But we are habituated in terms of thinking through our mind, through this mediate knowledge, paroksha. So Vedanta describes these three kinds of perception. Pratyaksha, which means literally perception, direct perception. Then there is paroksha, which means mediate, by means of something else. And finally, there is aparoksha. That means that which is not mediated by anything. The first, pratyaksha, really means direct knowledge that defines our world for us. The second, mediate, is usually knowledge that we get through some secondary means. And finally, this aparoksha, there's a little booklet in Vedanta called Aparoksha Anubhuti. Aparoksha literally means without the mediation of anything. That means consciousness grasping itself, turned back on itself. This is the process that we are supposed to be led to through the study of these things. So we'll pause here for today and return to it. Next 2 weeks, I will not be here. We'll return to it 3 weeks down the line. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.